All rise.
The Kosovo Specialist Chambers are now in session.
Please be seated.
Good afternoon and welcome everyone in and outside the courtroom. Before we start, pursuant to my decision setting the date for this first appearance, the court photographer is permitted to take a few photos for 1.5 minutes. Please proceed. Thank you. You may now leave the courtroom. Madam Court Officer, can you please call the case?
Good afternoon, Your Honor. This is case KSC BC 2020-07, the Specialist Prosecutor versus Hisni Yukati and Nasim Haradinaj.
Thank you very much, Madam Court Officer. Before asking those present in the courtroom to introduce themselves, I would like to remind everyone of a few rules that must be observed at all times in order to make the courtroom proceeding smooth. Please make sure you activate your microphone before speaking and you switch it off as soon as you finish. Talk slowly and clearly, as we have interpretation from and into Albanian and Serbian. Wait 5 seconds before responding to me or to a party or a participant in order to allow the interpreters to finish the interpretation. What is said in this hearing is transcribed in real time and will be reflected in a transcript available to the parties and to the public after this hearing. I would also like to remind the parties that certain information in this case is subject to protective measures and confidentiality orders. Confidential information shall not be disclosed in open session. If any party or participant must go into private session and refer to any confidential information, please indicate the reasons. Now, I would kindly ask the parties and participants to introduce themselves, starting with the Specialist Prosecutor's Office. Please.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. For the Specialist Prosecutor's Office are present Mr. Jack Smith, the Specialist Prosecutor, Mr. Alex Whiting, the Deputy Specialist Prosecutor, Mr. James Patz, Associate Prosecutor, Ms. Line Pedersen, Evidence and Case Manager, and I am Valeria Bolici, Prosecutor with SPO.
Thank you very much, Madam Prosecutor. Now I turn to the defense. Please, counsel.
Thank you, Your Honor. For the defense is present Bas Martens, attorney at law at The Hague, list attorney on the specialist chambers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, counsel. your client, Mr. Haradinaj, is also present in the courtroom for the record. Now I turn to the registrar. Madam Registrar, please.
Good afternoon, Your Honour, Registrar Fidel O'Donnell.
Thank you very much, Madam Registrar. And for the record, I'm Nicholas Guillou, single judge for this case. The suspect is appearing today for the first time before the specialist chambers following his arrest and transfer. Mr. Haradinaj, would you please rise? Can you please tell us your full name?
No microphone for the speaker.
Button on the right.
Bon.
Yes, thank you very much.
Nasim Smile Haradinaj.
Is
21st of May, 1963, Glojan. You've called me here as a citizen of Kosovo, and I am a citizen of Kosovo, national of Kosovo.
Finally, what is your current profession?
Mendoni professioni
You mean my education?
Job at the moment, or an occupation, a professional occupation?
po jam jurist.
I'm a lawyer, and I manage the watering system in Glojan, Detention municipality, and I'm deputy head of the War Veterans Organization of the KLA. And I do this job part-time.
Mr. Haradinaj, you may be seated.
Faleminderit.
Let me now move to the procedural history of the case. On 24 September 2020, I issued an arrest warrant against the suspect, having found grounded suspicion that Mr. Haradinaj is criminally responsible for the following offenses: intimidation during criminal proceedings, pursuant to Article 387 of the Kosovo Criminal Code; retaliation, pursuant to Article 388 of the Kosovo Criminal Code; and violation of the secrecy of proceedings, pursuant to Article 392 of the Kosovo Criminal Code. The specialist chambers have jurisdiction to prosecute these offenses by virtue of Article 15 of the law on the specialist chambers. The suspect was arrested in Kosovo on 25 September 2020, at which point he was served with the arrest warrant and informed of his rights. He was transferred to the detention facilities of the Kosovo Specialist Chambers in The Hague on 26 September 2020. Mr. Haradinaj, before we proceed any further, I have to make sure that you can follow the proceedings in a language that you understand and speak. Can you confirm that you understand and speak Albanian, please?
Po,
Yes, I understand and speak Albanian, and I follow everything perfectly well up until now.
Mr. Haradinaj, by this I am satisfied that you can follow the proceedings in Albanian, a language that you understand and speak, in accordance with Article 41 of the law. If at any moment in the course of the proceedings, whether today or another day, you are not receiving interpretation, or if there is a technical problem with the interpretation, please draw my attention to it immediately.
kjo nuk është gjuhë
this is not only a language that I speak and understand, it is my mother tongue. I speak other foreign languages as well.
Thank you, Mr. Haradinaj. Now, allow me to explain the specific purpose of this first appearance for the benefit of the suspect, but also those joining us in the public gallery and following the proceedings online. Today's hearing is not a trial. The suspect has not been charged yet, in the sense that no indictment has yet been submitted by the specialist prosecutor. No evidence will be presented or debated, and the guilt or innocence of the suspect will not be discussed or decided. The purpose of this first appearance is regulated by Article 41 of the law and Rule 55 of the rules. According to these provisions, as single judge, I shall ascertain whether the suspect has been informed of the reasons of his arrest, namely the crimes allegedly committed and the reasons for keeping the suspect in detention, and whether the suspect has been informed of his rights under the law and the rules, including his rights to legal assistance. I expect the parties to limit their submissions to these matters, which I will address in turn. Should either party wish to discuss any other matter not expressly foreseen in the context of a first appearance, they are invited to do so in writing by making a filing before me. And I can already take note of the submission of the counsel of Mr. Haradinaj, who filed submissions just before these hearings that I received. So first of all, Mr. Haradinaj, may I ask you to confirm that you have received the arrest warrant dated 24 September 2020 in a language that you understand and speak?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Haradinaj. For the benefit of the suspect and those joining in the public gallery, I will now ask the court officer to read the reasons for Mr. Haradinaj's arrest as indicated in the arrest warrant. Please proceed, Madam Court Officer.
Thank you, Your Honor. According to the arrest warrant, first, there is a grounded suspicion that Mr. Haradinaj is criminally responsible for attempting to commit the offense of intimidation during criminal proceedings pursuant to Article 387 of the Criminal Code. Specifically, there is a grounded suspicion that Mr. Haradinaj held 3 press conferences on 7, 16, and 22nd September 2020, where he distributed or otherwise made available to the media confidential and non-public information and documents relating to the work of the Specialist Prosecutor's Office and mentioned by name certain potential witnesses and gave information regarding their place of residence and other personal details. This conduct amounts to a serious threat or other means of compulsion to induce another person from making a statement or to make a false statement or to otherwise fail to state true information to the Specialist Prosecutor's Office and or the Specialist Chambers. Secondly, there is a grounded suspicion that Mr. Haradinaj is criminally responsible for committing the offense of retaliation pursuant to Article 388 of the Criminal Code. Specifically, there is a grounded suspicion that Mr. Haradinaj held 3 press conferences on 7, 16, and 22 September 2020, where he distributed or otherwise made available to the media confidential and non-public information and documents relating to the work of the Specialist Prosecutor's Office, including the names and personal details of potential witnesses, thus exposing these individuals to potential threats to their safety. This conduct amounts to a harmful act with the intent to retaliate for providing truthful information to the Special Investigative Task Force and/or the Specialist Prosecutor's Office relating to the alleged commission of criminal offenses. Thirdly, there is a grounded suspicion that Mr. Haradinaj is criminally responsible for committing the offense of violating the secrecy of proceedings pursuant to Article 392 of the Criminal Code. Specifically, there is a grounded suspicion that Mr. Haradinaj held 3 press conferences on 7, 16, and 22 September 2020, where he distributed or otherwise made available to the media confidential and non-public information and documents relating to the work of the Specialist Prosecutor's Office, including the names and personal details of potential witnesses. Furthermore, there are articulable grounds to believe that Mr. Haradinaj's arrest is necessary because specific circumstances indicate that he is a risk of flight, has the incentive, means, and opportunity to obstruct the progress of criminal proceedings, and will repeat or attempt to repeat the criminal offenses. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Madam Court Officer. Mr. Haradinaj, I wish to remind you that it is not the time to contest the reasons for your arrest, but simply to acknowledge that you have been informed of these reasons. You will have the opportunity to challenge your arrest in writing with the assistance of your counsel. Mr. Haradinaj, can you please confirm that you have been informed of the reasons for your arrest?
Yes, I was informed in writing and I read the reasons myself.
Thank you very much. And can you confirm in this context that you were given the opportunity to contact a family member or another appropriate person about your arrest?
Ja, klockan 2 som van.
No, this was very late, about 3 or 4 days after my arrest. They learned about my arrest through the media, but I only was able to inform them later on. It was only last night I was able to contact my family. That's how the circumstances were. That's why.
Possibility to contact them before?
No, I wasn't given the opportunity to contact them earlier because my phone numbers were on my phone, and I'd asked them to extract those phone numbers from my phone. And that's how the things went. How things went. However, I don't think that was on purpose, but that's how things stand.
So if I understand correctly, in fact, you didn't have the numbers to be able to contact them because they were in the phone that you didn't have with you at the time.
På sin telefon.
Yes, they were on my phone, the one that they seized. But they had opened the bag and they had the possibility to view them, but they didn't want to.
Thank you, Mr. Haradinaj. Now, let me inform you about your rights before the court. The law on the specialist chambers and the rules of procedure and evidence guarantee detained suspects a number of rights. I will read out the most important ones. First, you shall be presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond reasonable doubt. You are entitled to a fair and public hearing, subject to any measures ordered for the protection of victims and witnesses. You are entitled to challenge the lawfulness of your arrest and to request review of decisions on your detention, and to appeal such decisions directly before the Court of Appeals. You have the right not to be detained for an unreasonable period prior to the opening of the case, and you have the right to be released if the prosecutor does not submit an indictment against you within 1 year. You are entitled to a trial within a reasonable time or to be released pending trial if the relevant conditions are met. You have the right to have counsel assigned to you and without payment by you if you do not have sufficient means to pay for it. You have the right to have adequate time and facilities for the preparation of your defense and to communicate with the counsel of your own choosing. You have the right to have the free assistance of an interpreter if you cannot understand or speak the language used in the court. You have the right not to be compelled to testify against yourself or to admit guilt. And you also have the right to remain silent, and no adverse inference shall be drawn from your silence. Mr. Haradinaj, you heard the most important rights that you enjoyed as a detained suspect in accordance with the applicable legal framework of the specialist chambers. Do you understand these rights?
Guptova.
Yes, I understood them.
Thank you very much. I also wish to inform you that according to Article 21(5) of the law, you may not represent yourself because you are currently in detention, so representation by a specialist counsel is mandatory. It is my duty as single judge to ensure that your right to counsel is respected. To this end, I have noted the registrar filing informing me of the assignment of duty counsel for the purpose of this first appearance. I hereby inform you that you have the right to be represented by a counsel appointed for the entire duration of the proceedings, and if you do not have sufficient means to pay for your counsel, you may apply to be declared indigent, and in such case, you have the right to have a counsel assigned to you. Appointments and assignments of counsels are done by the registrar, so I invite you and your duty counsel to submit all relevant requests to her office. I also request the registrar to make a filing in the case record informing me of any relevant decisions in this regard. Now, at this point, I would like to invite the specialist prosecutor to give any indications on the next procedural steps, in particular, what he intends to submit or when he intends to submit an indictment. I am aware that there might not be a clear timeline at this stage, but I would like to remind the prosecutor that there are 2 suspects currently in detention, and I expect the judicial process to be fair and expeditious. You have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honor. First, if I may, I would like to clarify for the record that as soon as Mr. Haradinaj was brought to the detention facility in Pristina, he asked to contact a lawyer of his choice, and he was allowed this possibility, and in fact, he did contact a lawyer. In relation to Your Honor request, I would like to convey that the Specialist Prosecutor Office is working expeditiously to make sure that an indictment against Mr. Haradinaj is filed in the shortest period of time. There are a number of investigative steps that our office is undertaking at the moment in order to ensure that an indictment is filed together with all the relevant supporting material in order to establish a detailed and complete and exhaustive record. Among other things, our office is in the process of collecting information from numerous witnesses who have conveyed to our office to feel threatened and frightened by the acts that underline the reasons why Mr. Haradinaj has been arrested. Other indispensable investigative steps include the analysis of seized items, including computers, surveillance cameras, and other electronic devices. In addition to that, there are records that need to be requested by third parties and steps to be undertaken in order to ensure the transcription and translation of all the relevant audio and video evidence. The public appearances of the suspects in the last few weeks will also have to be collected, a process in order to establish an exhaustive record. Notwithstanding the volume of work that our office is carrying out, we anticipate that we'll be able to file an indictment shortly, and we assure Your Honor that we are committed to a speedy and throughout process. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Prosecutor. I would like to ask the parties if they have any urgent issues that they would like to raise, which cannot be addressed through written submissions. And I also remind the parties that should this require disclosure of confidential information, please let me know so that appropriate measures may be taken. I will start with the defense, and let me just add, if you want to raise the issues that you have already raised in the submissions, please just take a minute either to sum up or to add anything else, but we already have them in writing. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Some short remarks. In fact, the defense has filed preliminary motions to dismiss these charges and also a motion for immediate release of my client. The prosecutor, the Special Prosecutor's Office, just stated that there will be a speedy process and an indictment will be processed shortly. At the same time, I haven't heard a date. And also, the Specialist Prosecutor's Office choose the date of the arrest itself, which now ends up in the situation that we are waiting for due process, but with my client in custody. The work that has to be done, what was just mentioned by the prosecutor, is a lot of work, which will take, as we can expect in criminal proceedings, many weeks up to many months. We really have to review the charges against my client. And as I've laid down in my motion, and to be clear for everyone in this courtroom and outside, my client is not charged with war crimes. This is a war crime tribunal. My client is not charged with that. And that's also why in my submission that I filed with the court, I have said there's no jurisdiction over these accusations that have put forward to my client. Especially Article 387 is not even covered by jurisdiction, as I've said, which is of course one of the gravest concerns and accusations that have been made to my client. Furthermore, and I don't want to repeat everything I've put down in my submission, but what I concluded there is that I would ask the pretrial judge, Your Honor, to determine that the accusations are not within the jurisdiction of the Kosovo Specialist Chambers, to dismiss the charges on the grounds that I've put forward, to immediately release my client from pretrial detention, to release him from pretrial detention under probational conditions to be set by you, to provide Mr. Haradinaj and counsel with all documents and materials supporting the indictment in Kosovo and English language, especially in Kosovo language that he understands, or in Albanian language that he understands, because up till now we only have received the arrest warrant and the transfer document next to the COVID-19 protocols of the detention center. For this moment, thank you very much, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, Counsel. And I take note of the filing that you made today. In this respect, I order the Specialist Prosecutor to file her response to the request of the Counsel of Mr. Haradinaj by Friday, 2nd October, given the urgency of the request. And this is an oral order. If you want to respond very, very briefly to Mr. Martens, but very briefly, please, because this will be done by written rulings.
Yes, Your Honor. Just a few words. In relation to the challenge to jurisdiction, I note that the Defense Counsel omits to acknowledge the existence of two crucial provisions in the law establishing the Kosovo Specialist Chambers and the Specialist Prosecutor's Office that ground the jurisdiction of this chamber for the crimes Mr. Haradinaj has been arrested for. As for the response to the filings that Your Honor has indicated, will comply within the deadline. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Prosecutor. Mr. Martens. Okay. Mr. Haradinaj, please, would you have any issues you would like to raise specifically in relation to your arrest, transfer, or detention, please?
Do
you mean I need to tell you how I was arrested, how I came over here, I was transferred, or my opinion on what happened?
You don't need to tell me. It's an opportunity for you to raise any issues, especially if there's been any problem during the transfer, the arrest, or if you have any issues in your detention currently.
No, everything was done in conformity with the orders that you have issued. They behaved politely. I, of course, do not accept the arrest and the transfer, but if I am allowed to speak, I have certain conclusions that I have made, and I think if you allow me to say them now, I will say them now, but maybe I will be given the opportunity later. If you allow me, I have written something on paper. I don't think it will take long, about 3 minutes.
Usually, this first appearance is mainly for me to inform you of your rights. This is what we've done. It is not the moment to discuss the substance of the case. So I think it's not the moment for this presentation, but if there is something you absolutely want to say now, you have the floor, Mr. Haradinaj.
Well, I think I'm entitled to the free expression of my opinion, but if you want to prohibit me from that, you can do so, as you have done so up until now. As a matter of fact, I've already told out loud that I do not recognize these chambers. I do not recognize your work, and I believe that the term that has been assigned to you has already been expired, because the 5 years that were allocated to you are over with in August. And that's it. That's what I wanted to say. And this is something that I've made public time and again. So this is not something that I'm just telling you out loud today. So we have over 10,000 signatures that we've collected by the citizens that we're against these chambers. So the politicians of my country have to be blamed for it, because for their own interests, for their own pockets, they have decided to establish these chambers, and you are continuing with your work, although the deadline for the establishment of the chambers are over with. So you have violated the constitution of my country. You have violated every human law, the right to expression. And even if you condemn me with 500,000 years, I think you cannot do nothing to change my opinion and the opinion of other people about the existence of these chambers. I was sentenced when I was 15 for the right of my expression. So it was the violation of that right that I went to prison with. And this is the situation today as well. So we have fought for the minimum human right, that is the expression, the free expression of your own opinion, of one's opinion. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much, Your Honor. I don't want to discuss any further because I see that you do not have any predisposition to give me the time to read out whatever I've prepared for this session today. Thank you.
For your remarks. Counsel to raise any issue you will want, especially in the next steps. So really don't feel frustrated. You will really have the time to express any arguments you wish. Finally, I inform you that in the coming days, I intend to issue some decisions with a view to organizing the subsequent phases of the proceeding efficiently. I will notably issue a decision on the reclassification of documents and an order on the working language of the proceedings. Mr. Haradinaj, I also inform you that you may challenge your detention in accordance with Rule 57, and this will be dealt with in written submissions and rulings. Furthermore, pursuant to Article 41 and Rule 57, I shall review your detention at least every 2 months upon your counsel's or the prosecutor's request, or at my own initiative. Taking into consideration the type of offenses and mindful of Rule 57.1, I also invite the specialist prosecutor to submit an indictment for confirmation as soon as possible. This concludes today's hearing. I thank the parties and the registry for their attendance. I also wish to thank the interpreters, stenographers, audiovisual technician, and security personnel for their assistance. The hearing is adjourned. Thank you.
All rise.